Robert and Carrie have a unique lifestyle. You guys were able to retire at age 54. That means you must have made every single financial decision correctly. But does such a frugal lifestyle cost them huge opportunities?
But do you consider yourself cheap still, or do you think you're...
Oh, I'm still cheap. I mean, we still...
shaking her head. Oh, yeah. Let's dive in and find out.
Welcome to Making a Millionaire, where we help our guests discover their great, big, beautiful tomorrow. I'm your host, Brian Preston, joined by Mr. Bo Hansen.
That's right. We are so excited that we can help walk you through the stories of millionaires and millionaires in the making. And today is no different, Brian. We are right now sitting down with Robert and Carrie. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
Man, I am so excited to talk with you guys because you are a little bit different. A lot of times we sit down and talk with folks who are building towards financial independence, and they're trying to get there, and they're trying to get to the top of the hill. And you guys have done it. You guys are now on the other side of the equation, getting to live in your financial abundance, and I'm excited to dive in. So walk us through, what's your story? Who are you guys? Where are you from? What'd you do? How'd you end up here in studio with us today?
Well, we graduated college. We grew up in middle class families. Maybe mine was a little lower middle class than hers. We were both, I think, primarily the first to graduate college. We were blessed to not have college debt. We both did well in high school and had our scholarships and things to be able to fund a lot of that. Mm-hmm. So we were set on a good footing to come out of that. We both worked for a living, worked hard in high school, and then as well as in college, and then afterwards. And then ever since then, we tried to start off our marriage with the basic premise of living well below our means.
Yeah, that's great.
And so we pretty much lived like we were very poor. I think misers, if you want to call it that, financial misers for a little while. So that basically set us on a good trajectory. And then ever since then, we were blessed to make more money. Mm-hmm. We were never really rich in terms of income. I was just an entry-level IT manager at the greatest. Never anything beyond that. But we lived below our means and saved, and then ultimately we were able to retire at age 54. So we have two kids. They're both in their late 20s. They both have advanced degrees and are doing really well, and on their way as well. And
I think you're underselling yourself on your success and the fact that discipline muscle obviously was very strong, worked incredibly well, because we'll share in a minute how successful you guys are. But I loved how you talked about you essentially small incremental decisions, that discipline stacked on top with enough time really created some amazing things. Carrie, did you want to add anything to this journey? Because y'all have also been some adventure seekers too.
We have. I was just going to say, and I did not work for a lot of years. We homeschooled both of our kids all the way through high school. Okay. But when we got married, we knew that I probably wanted to stay home with the kids. So we lived off just one income.
That's incredible.
Whatever I made just went to the savings account. But yeah, since we've retired, we hiked 600 miles of the Appalachian Trail, and then we bought an RV van, and we've lived in it for 2.5 years, full time, and then just recently bought a house.
That's amazing. So you guys were able to retire at age 54. That means you must have made every single financial decision correctly. Like you did everything right. Was that your experience coming through making financial decisions?
I usually tell people, I say financial independence comes at maybe 1 million good decisions, and then you try to shelter from the bad ones that you make.
You just avoid the catastrophic ones, right?
We all make bad decisions, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those. I think about like a Roth IRA was one of those that, when Roths first came out, because we're older, we remember when they came out. And I remember telling her, because there was also a lot of talk back then about a federal sales tax, that there was talk about getting rid of the income tax and the federal sales tax. And I said, I don't know that I trust that they're going to honor a Roth correctly, because if I did a Roth and paid taxes on it, and then all of a sudden they do a sales tax, am I going to get credit for it? I'm going to get doubled up. So we never did Roth.
Okay.
So just as an example, like we never did Roth.
Lack of trust of the government.
Now, I cannot help but notice you're from Atlanta or from the Georgia area, and you talked about the fair tax. We're both from Georgia. That is the John Linder, Neil Bortz. You obviously were listening to some talk radio. They got you scared, and you ended up not doing the Roth IRA. I think Clark Howard would be very disappointed in that. But I couldn't help but notice those when you started talking about these things. I was like, that's an Atlanta influence going on right there.
So I just remember our first year when we were doing okay. I had an interesting job in college that set us. We had at least some savings, and then I had a decent job coming out of college, and we lived like we were dirt poor. We drove our 12, 15-year-old cars that the paint was peeling off. We went out to eat once a month, and it was usually like Wendy's. Like it was like not a Happy Meal, a value meal.
Their value meal,
a value meal at Wendy's. Like, can we keep it under $10 once a month to go out to eat? And that was our big, thing. And I remember we were at church and they had a marriage retreat, and we went on this marriage retreat. And I realized on the bus going on the marriage retreat, I said, we never paid for it. And the church thought we were so poor.
They sponsored you.
We got a scholarship. And I mean, to be honest, we probably had like $30,000 or $40,000 in the checking account at that point.
And just never lived like it.
But because we lived that
literally the millionaires next door. I mean, that's literally what you're defining.
And I remember just like begging our pastor, I'm like, we can afford to pay, for the tuition.
But I do have to ask, because these things, you guys, have y'all transitioned? Because I understand some of those early discipline good decisions that might seem extreme to your peers and relatives are what were those small decisions that led to big results down the road. But did you have a transition at any point in time where y'all actually started leaning more into the experiences and things like that?
I would say, I mean, you know those better than me. Probably, we had a lot of good experiences. I mean, we've been able to travel and do cruises, even
so, not just in your retired state, but even while you're working, while you were raising kids.
Right. We were able to take the kids to Europe a couple times, and we've done a lot of great things.
That's awesome.
So do you consider yourself cheap still, or do you think you're?
Oh, I'm still cheap. I mean, we still
shaking your head. Oh yeah.
We still book inside guaranteed cabins on a cruise ship and hope to get upgraded. We don't buy the drink package. We won't buy a soft drink on the cruise ship. I mean, it's like if we buy one, that's a big deal. But we'd much rather do a lot lot of experiences. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, at lower cost than
bedazzle your basic life essentially by doing these things. And just to give you guys credit, we pay for all of our guests to have nice hotel rooms. And you guys, you brought the RV up
like,
instead of staying
on wheels. We're going to be just fine.
Is that out? Thank you. Or was that out of just you're more comfortable because you got everything set up the way you want it?
Well, it was. We didn't know it was pretty cool this time because of the weather, but it was when we're doing this. But no, we enjoy it, and then we also. I'm just always a cheapskate.
I love it.
It's like
I love it because it sounds like you are, but you're still able to enjoy life and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I'm curious now. So again, you're in financial independence, right? You're in retirement. You're doing the things that you want to be doing. What are some of your concerns now? Like, what are the things that, obviously, I imagine while you're working, you're so worried, are we going to have enough? Are we going to be able to retire? Are we going to be able to get our kids through college and out of the house? But now, it's a different set of are we's. And so what are the are we's you have now? What are the things that you guys think about when it relates to like financial goals or concerns?
I mean, I think you're always thinking, is that the right amount of money? How much can we spend each year? Because you don't know how long you need this money to last, or how much you're going to need in future years, and so it's always a little bit of an equation to try to figure out what the right answer is.
How have you guys been answering that? Like, how do you answer the question, or how have you answered the question? Do we have enough, and how much can we spend?
We don't think of it as how much can we spend. I mean, to be honest, that's never. We don't do like a. Oh, if I take 4% of my net assets, then I'll just go spend that amount. It's like, what is the lifestyle that we're trying to live? And then how does that really fit with this? I will say, related to that, one of the questions that we have, that's a complicated question. I don't know how to say it really well, but we use the healthcare marketplace. So, which is so dependent upon your income.
Yeah.
And your income is so difficult to predict. Like, with how you what capital gains are
Sure.
and dividends and things like that. It's really like you're just sort of guessing at your income. And it's such a huge variance on that about the choice that you make about healthcare. Because if all of a sudden we have really higher income, then a different choice would probably have been a better choice than using the marketplace. So you don't want to let it wag the dog too much, but that is definitely one of the things. Every year when we do our taxes, we're like, well, I don't know, how much money did we make last year?
I mean, part of it is we just know you're going to pay taxes.
Yeah.
So if you do this, you'll pay taxes on this money. If you do the other thing, you'll pay taxes on the other money. And you just have to be okay with that.
Okay, great.
We're also not, we strive to not be anxious about things. Like it just, I mean, part of that is being blessed. Sure. I mean, to be honest,
absolutely.
It's a little bit easy to not be anxious, when the van needs because it's a Mercedes Sprinter, right? So anytime you go to get work done, it's always $2,000.
It's always a Mercedes
It doesn't
repair.
matter. It's just like, I'll just give you $1,800 just to start. It doesn't. But you try not to be anxious about that. And, part of that is the blessing of having some resources, right?
We'll get into it in greater details, but we did notice even when we were looking at your investments, for somebody who's now living off of your resources and assets, you're still equity heavy. Is that something how did you come to, because have you always, I mean, it's fine, there's this whole life change. When you're younger, you want to be aggressive, but usually as you start living off of the assets, you dial it down a little bit. But when we looked at your stuff, you're pretty lean on cash. Now there's some lifestyle things that happened recently. That's more of a timing thing. But I did notice on the asset allocation, very, very heavy on equities.
How would you describe your portfolio?
Yeah.
Is it an aggressive portfolio? Is it a conservative
I
portfolio?
would say it's aggressive. Here's, I think, a few things about it. One is it's always a struggle about how much you're going to spend in a year. It's one of those things I remember asking people, and it's hard to get people to be, because people don't want to be perceived as prideful, and it's always personal. Personal finance is personal. But we were just trying to figure that out, because it's hard to really just budget from like working to retirement.
Right.
And what is your lifestyle going to be? What choices are you going to make? So we've basically figured out that so far we've been spending about $80,000 a year.
Okay.
In retirement. And that's just total. That's everything. That's healthcare, giving, everything that we travel, all that kind of stuff. And that really helped us a lot to have that idea. Now, we have had some lifestyle changes recently. I'll go ahead and share that we've had our second grandchild.
Oh, congratulations.
And I think the second grandchild is sort of, I say it's a gravitational pull that says maybe we're not just going to live in the van full time and be away too much to miss too many of those opportunities. So we did make the choice to buy a house.
Okay.
So we had no car. All we had was the van. We had just to be clear, we had no house. We sold our house in 2022.
Literally living out of a van in retirement.
Yeah. I mean, the day that we handed our keys to the new owner of our house, and it was a fairly large, like 10-acre house in Gwinnett County near Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, it was a 7-figure transaction, right?
Yeah, it was a
Right?
7-figure transaction, and we owned it outright. So, so we handed those keys over, and that day we went to the Appalachian Trail to get on. So, I mean, it was like the storage building was full.
That's so awesome.
We were
Crazy.
It's
okay.
And at that point, we had already ordered our van. It was in the height of like when RVing was really crazy.
Yep.
So we paid top dollar pretty much for the van, and there was a backlog on it. So the van was delivered in June. So we left in March and went out on the trail in June, and then got off the trail in June when the RV was ready, and then just hit the trail in the RV. So we've been doing that ever since, living in the van, and then in October of 2024, we bought a house and another car, just so we have another car, and so it's been a journey. So now we're trying to figure out what our expense model is really going to look like.
Because now you have a mortgage again, and there's some stuff
Right.
and carry costs that maybe weren't existing previously, or at least in the early stages of retirement.
Right. So we're trying to reset that. Obviously, we could just pay cash for the house, but we just decided not to, because I mean we're doing okay with the investments. They're doing okay. The interest rate's not great. We'll probably refinance if we decide to keep it.
It's right under 6, like 5.8, somewhere around there.
And we put 25% down.
Yeah.
So we were carrying a good amount of cash, especially when interest rates when
cash was paying 5+%.
Yeah, it was paying really nice. It wasn't too bad. So we had that. We had basically 3 years of expenses in cash.
Right.
So, when you say it's an aggressive portfolio, it's like, yeah, but I'm carrying 3 years of expenses in cash.
Were.
Right.
Carrying 3 years of expenses.
Let's make sure, but the were.
Yeah. So now, that's why we're currently drawing down. I mean, I share some details. We're drawing down $9,000 from our post-tax investments.
Great.
And we're trying to reset that to see if that'll replenish some a little bit. We're honestly not sure because we had nothing. We were shocked when we emptied our storage unit, which was a 10 by 20 storage unit, not very large. And it was mostly just furniture and like a piano and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't even have a rake. I mean, it's like all of a sudden you're resetting going, oh, we don't have, so we're having to restock some of that to live in a house.
I love that what you said is, okay, the way that we got to where we are is by making just small decisions. But obviously for folks out there listening, they're hearing, hey, these people were able to sell their house and live out of a van, and they must have a pretty healthy financial situation. I thought it'd be nice because you guys were kind enough to share a net worth statement. Let's kind of look at sort of where you guys are presently. So when we look at your current net worth, you've already alluded to this. You beat us to the punch. You've only got about $54,000 in cash, but it sounds like there's a strategy to get that number to a targeted goal. And you said that your burn rate is about $80,000 a year. So if our goal is to have somewhere between 18 to 24 months of expenses, I imagine your cash goal is going to be somewhere around $120,000 to $160,000. Is that what you're thinking?
My guess is it'll be a little higher than that.
Okay.
Well, we're also we think our burn rate's going to be a little higher with the house. And
what do you think the burn rate will be?
I don't know. I think it's going to be 100.
Okay.
100. I think it'll be 100 if I had to guess.
But by the way, that's still not really going to stress your level of assets. I mean, so you didn't hear us give any anxiety ourselves, because it was actually, that's very within reasonable.
And then when we walk through the investment portfolio, you have you already mentioned you don't have a ton of Roth assets because you didn't do the Roth. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in terms of the other two buckets and the three buckets, it's pretty interesting. You have a lot of after-tax assets split between two joint accounts, about $1,050,000 there. Why the two joint accounts? Is there a reason that you have two separate after-tax accounts?
I had a Vanguard account for a really long time. One of my bad decisions was I used a very large financial management company. I think this was actually Pride when I was in my 30s, and I thought I was becoming big money, big deal. So I went to a large brokerage house and I said, "Why don't you manage some of my money?" And they really did a poor job. It didn't last long. But the funny thing is, I know my personality. My personality is I'm pretty good at buying stocks. I'm horrible at selling stocks.
Like individual stocks.
Like individual stocks.
Well, that's the hard part. You got to get it right twice. Right? You got to get it right twice.
And I because I just question it and I doubt and I second guess after the fact. So the funny thing is that when we dumped those guys, we just transferred all of their assets into Merrill Lynch. I'm sorry, not Merrill Lynch, into Vanguard.
Okay.
And one of those accounts is my Vanguard account.
Got it. Okay.
And so and honestly, the only time I've ever sold those holdings that I've held for 20 years is when I'm donating like a cash transaction.
Yeah.
So I take the things with the biggest capital gains and I do that for a donation. Or the one time we bought the car.
Okay. So you're donating it directly to the charity of the shares. That's great.
Right. So that's what we've been using that account for. So the holdings in that one are really not great sometimes. But I've never done anything with it.
But so this is a big chunk of your assets. We're talking about, if your total investable portfolio is about 3.8 million, we're talking about $1 million that's in these accounts that are
brokerage number 2.
Oh, they're small. Okay.
Brokerage number 2 is managed.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's the brokerage number 1, the 51,000.
I was like, oh my goodness, you have $1 million. You're not doing anything.
No. The brokerage number 2 is pretty well managed and actively managed.
Wonderful. Okay. Is that something you're doing, or do you have?
We have somebody else doing it.
Okay.
And primarily it's because we want to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And I know how I am.
Sure.
I know I would sit around watching Fox Business or CNBC and I would just get consumed with
analyzing what to do.
And we just don't want to do it.
Sure.
It's not that complex, but it just allows us
You're paying more for peace of mind than for the strategy of it, probably.
Right. And it just helps us to enjoy life.
I know the curse. I want our audience to hear it, because you just said, I'm good at picking stocks. And I want to echo that, because I think people who actually have record of picking stocks, it still can be a curse. There's two reasons it really turns into a curse is because even if you choose the perfect stock, typically people will sell it after it makes 3 to 4 times what you initially invested, because you're like, man, I've made 300%, 400%. You've owned it for 3 or 4 years, 5 years. You sell it. Well, then it becomes the next NVIDIA or something like that. And you watch it go up tenfold. And then you're like, I should have never sold it at 3 or 4. Well, the other side of it is that if you don't sell it, because even when you're making money, when that stock goes down 5, 6%, even though it might only be less than 1% of your total net worth, you find that 100% of your happiness for the day has been wrapped up into the emotional side of that. And that's one of the things.
Is that true? Is that an accurate statement?
That's why it is a curse. And I tell people there's nothing wrong with vacation money to do individual stocks. It can be very fun. It's a great hobby. But we love index funds. We love it because I think it takes the emotional side out of things. And you're just you're counting on this ever-expanding economy, the law of accelerating returns, and kind of benefiting.
Can I tell you why we aren't doing index funds?
Yeah.
And then you can tell us why we're wrong. It's fine.
Okay.
I got a thick skin. Part of it's that healthcare marketplace thing. So because if I do S&P 500 index funds, and let me just say, I'm not going to pull my money out right before they do distributions, right? I'm not going to consume my life with reading when they're doing it and pulling all of my money out so that I don't get capital gains distributions. Then all of a sudden, I get a big capital gains hit because these are big numbers. And my income, my quote unquote adjusted gross income, has drastically changed. And now my healthcare, I got to pay another 15 grand besides taxes. I got to pay another 15 or 20 grand in healthcare just because the mutual fund cut a distribution. Right. So that's the reason that worries me. And I don't know if that's right.
You could counter that several ways. Maybe you look at ETFs, which would allow you then just to get the dividend, because you're still getting dividend income. We looked at your projected, these statements have the projected incomes on there. That's one way to be kind of more tax efficient, so you can afford index funds. Even if it's the mutual fund variety, they're still more tax efficient than managed mutual funds, because it's the turnover, that manager coming in there and picking the winners and losers that typically is causing those big distributions, those capital gain year-end distributions. The mutual funds will have them because they change, and even the ETFs to some degree, because they change the portfolio. The Kodaks of the world disappear off of the S&P, and then they add the Teslas and whatever else is the hot stock that joins the S&P 500. So I don't know that I think that necessarily is as inefficient, because that's one of the reasons we love index funds is that they're very tax efficient.
And then the other thing that you have the ability to do, and it looks like, judging from your tax records, you probably were doing this, is when there are significant downturns like 2022 or like fourth quarter of 2018 or the middle of, you can do a bunch of loss harvesting where you can go out and harvest those losses, and then those losses can be used to offset future capital distributions or capital transactions. So there are ways that you can tax manage it without having that from the from the portfolio distribution.
It is one of the things Carrie has mentioned, and we tried to look at this. It seems like the tax man's pretty good about making sure that they get some money.
The system is set up to get taxes.
And we really try not to completely get wagged around. I think sometimes people get so consumed with saving, not a penny, but a quarter, in taxes, that they're spending an awful lot of effort to try to do that. So we try not to do that too much.
Sure.
But
what
maybe
it does
sneak in.
You don't want to get into a situation where you lose control of your tax circumstance, right? Like, you'd love to have an idea in there where you could control what you're paying in taxes and not just be
surprise.
So interesting, Brian.
I definitely want to get into taxes, but I do want to. There's one other behavioral thing that you've said, though, that I want before we get into the tax, because I love taxes, by the way, so I'm not going to delay us too much.
You love tax planning.
I do.
I love tax planning.
I've been in the weeds a little bit with it. But you also said that you got this house proceeds, 7 figures, and then it just got washed into the market all of a sudden. And then we all know, in hindsight, 2022, was not a great year to just throw 7 figures into the market. But to their defense, your advisor, 8 out of 10 years, markets make money. So, if you're going off the statistical norm, it's okay. But I always worry about my retirees, is that because it does hit different when the market goes down 15, 20% when you're retired versus when you're working. Because when you're working, you're just like, well, I'll make a little bit more money. It'll recover. It'll be okay. You said something that I thought was very powerful. You said, I didn't even tell Carrie what was going on because I just knew it would cause. These are the behavioral components. So you probably did have some stress, even though it's not even part of your personality to a degree.
Not very much. To be honest, not really very much.
Okay.
I mean, because we pulled like $300,000 of the proceeds out, and I had that sitting in a Vanguard cash account.
For you. Yeah.
So I'm sitting there going, if I hadn't done that, I would have gone, oh man, this is not a good time.
Then your advisor probably did it exactly right, knowing your personality profile on that. It's just that for a lot of clients that I see that maybe don't handle that emotional stuff as well, we typically, just like right now, you're going through and you're dollar cost averaging out to replenish your cash. That's an aggressive stance, which does tie into just going lump sum in, whereas maybe somebody who's a little more anxiety prone, we would have dollar cost average those housing proceeds probably over 10 months into the market just to cut the corner or edge off of any type of volatility that might be happening in the short term.
I assumed my advisor was actually going to do that, but because I didn't tell him, he said no.
Surprise!
I think somebody says that time in the market or whatever. It's a good thing. It's like, well, let's just get in the market. So they pretty much over 3 days. Which ultimately, it's all okay now.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, 2023 turned out to be great. 2024 is great. It's amazing what a little bit of time can do to save things.
So
right now, as part of your strategy, you're obviously living off of these assets. You're pulling money out on a monthly basis to be able to satisfy that $80,000 to $100,000 burn rate. But in addition to that, you're selling to raise cash. Am I? Because you're also doing the $9,000 a month to build up your cash. Am I understanding that correctly?
I mean, that's all that those investment monies are doing. So yeah, the rest of it is just sitting in. I mean, we're using that brokerage one account.
Because the goal is to get that 50,000 up to some higher number, 150, 200. You're just doing that through a monthly distribution strategy, right?
And we're not in that big of a hurry to do that. Maybe we should be in a little bit more of a hurry.
Well, it just seems like having a nice, right now market has done incredibly well. And it seems like having an emergency fund in place would be valuable because generally when bad things happen, they kind of happen in all at once, right? Market goes down and the Sprinter van breaks down, or you have to replace the HVAC, or whatever the thing
Real
may
estate
be.
goes bad. Unemployment, inflation, all these things happen at the same time.
And so having that emergency fund there is just one of those things. Again, if you're looking for peace of mind, things that don't keep you up, I would begin to think if my goal is to go from 50,000 to 150, 200,000. Is that something I should do more quickly than I'm doing right now?
I also one thing we couldn't tell from planning prep is because you sent us a tax transcript, but it doesn't really show carry forwards or other things. Last year, you took a capital loss carry forward. You took the $3,000 loss. So I know sitting in the background somewhere, you have some capital loss carry forwards. It might allow you to take and fill up your cash reserves today while the stock market's at all-time highs with zero tax impact. It's something to consider just because we don't want, I think you're wired in an incredibly healthy way where you don't stress out, but I'd like to make sure that stays that way. Because if the market went down 15, 20% and you had to Apple Cart turnover, figure out how we're going to find the $8,000 a month or whatever you need, $7,000 to $8,000. I don't want you making those desperate decisions for nothing. Because now we're getting into immaterial choices that could have material impacts in the long term if you're not careful.
And so as we're looking at your net worth statement, obviously we have the after-tax accounts. And then, Robert, you have two different pre-tax accounts. You have your rollover IRA, and then you have your 401k. Any reason you haven't consolidated those two? Is
we actually have now.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So
we
those
did
are now
we did it just recently.
All in one. So you have a big, were there any Roth dollars in that 401k?
No.
Okay, so it's all pre-tax money now. And then, Carrie, you have a traditional IRA, all pre-tax. Then you have an inherited IRA. What's going on with that inherited IRA? Is that something you're having to take required distributions from presently? Okay,
yes.
So it's money that's drawing out. And did you inherit that at the time in which you're going to have 10 years to where you have to?
No, it was before that.
It was before that. So you're not going to have to, you're not going to have to distribute that all inside of the 10-year window?
Right.
Okay, wonderful.
And so far, all we've been doing is whatever, I think it's Fidelity. Whatever Fidelity tells us is the required RMD, we just take that currently. But we always have that in our hip pocket that we could also go faster
Sure,
with that
there's
too.
money in there that could be tapped into. And then on the liability side, you obviously said you borrowed money for the RV, so you still owe about a little under $130,000 on that. And now you have a mortgage, right? So while you are financially independent, it is unique that you do have some debt on the books. But I say this all the time, and Brian hates it when I say this. Being debt-free is amazing, but also having the ability to be debt-free is amazing. And I would argue that with a total net worth of $4 million and an investable net worth of like 3.8, you guys have the ability to be debt-free. You've just not chosen to go that route just yet. So you guys are in a really, really healthy financial situation, right? Even living off of the $80,000 to $100,000 a year, to me, that doesn't scream a withdrawal rate that's like super concerning. It certainly seems like the assets.
You guys are less than 3%. Not that we use safe withdrawal rates to drive, but it is a great indicator of how conservative somebody's retirement is. So y'all are in a solid position. That's why when I find out you're so aggressive, I'm like, Robert gets a little grace because, he's done such a disciplined job of building up assets that it's okay that he wants to be a cowboy on this part.
Well, I think one of the things that made so much of this possible was when our kids were in college, like we homeschooled all the way through, and then Carrie started tutoring at the time when tuition started to be due, and she was a private tutor all through their college. And she made enough money to basically just pay for all of college.
Oh, that's
for
great.
both of our kids, med school. Like a lot of things. So it not only allowed them to be set up really well, it allowed us to
Actually
continue
satisfy that cost,
right. And then so then we took all of our stuff about the same time the house is getting paid off, and then so we're just taking all of my money and it's just going into HSA and maxing out everything that we can max out.
Hearing you give Carrie that compliment, I will tell you one of the things I enjoyed when I was preparing for our meeting today is you provided us, we had this spreadsheet of net worth over time. And it was basically from 2018 to now. And I loved on the far right column, y'all had made personal notes. And I felt like I was going on this journey with you guys because there was the tuition payments were in there. So also you have your hard work. I loved when you obviously were helping out, like there was a car purchase to help out the kids. There were charitable contributions to the church. And it was fun. And I loved that I got to see that because I imagine as you guys, when you get to give compliments to each other and you get to look at your journey and see where your success is, doing a net worth statement every year was pretty valuable for you guys because you were obviously you've been doing this since, at least from what I could see, 2018. Is this just an annual tradition for you guys?
Yeah, we've been doing it actually for a longer time. I did something wrong and lost the file somewhere. I think I set a password on it or something because I was really worried about it being, and then I did something and it just got lost. So it's been actually for a long time. We basically since maybe about age 30 or 35, we targeted a $3 million number. When you talk about knowing your number, it wasn't with incredible detail. I think the stuff that you do is more detailed.
Sure.
But it was sort of like I was thinking of it as what a withdrawal rate might be, and kind of get what is the escape velocity or some phrase like that. So you get to a point where it's making more money than you are, than your salary.
Oh, you're talking about even when you're building,
because it gets to that point where it's like, okay, even a decent salary. I think at a point I'm making in the high hundreds was probably about the top end of my salary, and then you're like, oh, I'm making a lot more money out of investments at a point, right? So, but when we started getting close to that 3 million, you could see that trajectory. That's when you get really serious about, okay, we're getting close.
Yeah.
And then by the time we saw that we were getting close to that number, by the time I think I gave a year's notice to retire, then we were already at 3.5 at that point, and then the market corrected a little bit. We were back to 3, but it was okay.
As you can see, it's continued to grow and build.
As you guys have been retired now, have you seen the accounts continue to grow? Have you seen the portfolio get larger, which is a wonderful place to be, right? Like if the assets keep growing, what that suggests to us is that you guys are no more at the pass or fail. Are we going to be okay? Are we going to be able to retire? It's more about optimizing. Are we making decisions now that are optimal from a financial planning standpoint? That's where we get really, really excited because when, we love talking about in financial independence, if you have 3 distinct tax buckets, you get to pick and choose how you pay taxes and where you pay taxes from and what you trigger. And you can do things like manipulate your income for ACA marketplace resources or for Medicare surcharge things. What's really, really interesting about you guys is you have so much in pre-tax assets, and you're not actually pulling off of those pre-tax assets yet. So what's going to happen is as you continue to spend down the after-tax brokerage account, those pre-tax assets are going to grow and grow and grow and grow, which is a wonderful problem to have. But you know what happens at some point with pre-tax assets? The government says, hey, okay, now you got to start pulling it out. Now you got to
It's back to y'all's point that you said, hey, the government seems to be pretty good at figuring out how they can get the taxes from you. They've designed the system to essentially create a tax bomb for those required minimum distributions.
But they keep extending the age, right?
They do. They do.
So it's
one of the
a little
things,
bit lower risk.
One of the things that we wanted to model out for you guys to look is that, okay, if we think about every year that remains for the rest of your life, and we think about every year, and we just assumed age 95, what does each year look like? And we have an illustration showing a little bit of a tax projection of your income. Now, we did not know about your inherited IRA, so right there at age 60, that's when we had assumed that your IRA would balloon, right? But what you can see is that every single year, if you're living on about $80,000, and this is all in present value dollars, you're going to be pretty consistent in terms of the taxable income you show every single year. But then once you get to age 75 and you have to start pulling those required minimum distributions, instead of getting to live in the 12% tax bracket that you guys are living in now, all of a sudden now you have to jump into the 24% bracket, which eventually turns into 32% bracket, which eventually turns into 35% bracket.
I have a question, Robert. Do you think 12% is a low tax rate?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a dream.
It's what I mean. When you pay 12%, you're like, man, how is the government letting us get away with paying 12%? But do you think it's interesting that even though we've agreed that 12% is a low tax rate, that you're not maximizing that tax? And now we're going to go back to, you're going to say it's my insurance premiums.
I got insurance premiums to think about.
No, it's just because we have enjoyed living life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like we're not spending a lot of time thinking about it. And maybe we should spend a little bit more time. I mean, that's fair. But to be honest, that's really what it's been. I mean, we've seen all 50 states. We've done a bunch of travel. We do about 3 months of international travel every year. I mean, we do a lot, right? So and
this is what we want you to do.
So we're enjoying that. Yeah. But so it's not like because I actually did some of that calculation about a month ago. And I said, what if things went well and we stayed the way we were? What is my RMD going to be at 75? And right. I was like, and I think it was 300,000 was the number. I kind of did a quick calculation.
So you can see that. I mean, obviously, at the end of this plan, age 95, in today's dollars, you guys would have about a little under $6 million, right? So that's a fantastic inheritance or assets that you would be able to pass on. But over the life cycle of you guys being retired, you would have paid about $3 million in taxes in present value dollars. When we look at this, what we see is an optimization opportunity that we think has a material impact. So there are some assumptions we made. We said, hey, if we were going to implement some planning, we're going to give you guys an idea of a strategy to think through. Here are some assumptions that we walked through. We said, okay, let's assume that your living expenses stay right around $80,000. You could use $100,000. It's not going to change the numbers. Let's assume that tax laws stay the same because obviously, there's a sunset that's supposed to happen, but let's just, for simplicity, let's assume that they stay flat. Let's assume that your current assets and liabilities stay roughly the same. You pay down the debt on the schedule, you're going to pay down the debt, your assets grow, you don't get an inheritance or anything like that. We're going to assume that you true up your emergency funds. We know that's going to happen in the following year. Let's assume inflation averages about 3%. Let's say your portfolio on average could make about 7.5% per year. We think that's pretty conservative, certainly for someone who is equity heavy as you are, but pretty conservative. We said, okay, what does that look like? And this is what we said, what if just in the years that you could maximize the 12% bracket, what if you began a Roth conversion strategy where you began converting some of those pre-tax dollars to Roth in those early years before you get to RMDs? And when we look at how that plays out, it's pretty wild. So again, all you can see is we're maxing out up to the top of the 12% bracket. Just by doing that, we're able to, at the end of your plan, instead of having the almost $6 million you ended up with, because of that tax savings of the lifetime, you actually end up with an ending portfolio of about $7.5 million, which is $1.5 million more than what you're currently on track for. And your cumulative taxes that you pay over your lifetime drop by about $600,000. So let me pause for a second and ask the question, is that meaningful? Is that valuable? Is that something that, oh man, I'd like to have $1.5 million more dollars and pay $600,000 less.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. I didn't know where you were going to go. I was hoping the answer was yes.
And what I also love about it is that you think about the fact that it's just like you have an inherited IRA, and right now, I mean, it's good because it's an asset, but there's some accounting you have to do where you have to do these required distributions every year. You got to pay taxes on it. What about if you pass on Roth assets to the kids? They get 10 years to let them keep growing. That's an incredible opportunity from an estate standpoint and legacy standpoint as well.
There was definitely a plan to do some Roth. I mean, especially, I think there's always in the back of our minds, like, are we really good? Like, are we good?
Sure.
So before we started making structural changes, we have a tax advisor, an advisor, and it's one of our main questions. It's like, okay, we're going to buy a house. It's going to be this much. We're going to put this much down.
Can we afford it?
Are we good?
Okay? Yeah.
Are we good? Like, that's one of the benefits of paying really smart people who live and breathe this stuff like you guys to just look at you and go, yes.
How are they answering that question? What exercise are they walking through to give you some peace of mind around that?
He said, if you weren't good, I would tell you.
Okay, I love it.
So that's just what we repeated to ourselves when we were buying the house.
In fact, he even said, in fact, there are people that I'm currently advising that I've said, you're not good. Yeah. You can't keep doing that. If you keep doing that, I don't want to be your advisor. And that's good. Fiduciary, we kind of want that. Yeah. That's, and I know you guys do a lot
I do want to point out, though, on our chart, though, is it's great that we got you below where the 35% tax rate starts. But wouldn't it be nice? Because when I look at that, I'm still like, when I ask myself, and you even heard us say it on content, we always say if I could get your taxes below 25%, that's great. That seems historically from a context of low. 25 to 30, it's kind of in that gray zone when people are deciding between Roth or traditional and their tax savings. Over 30 is a high tax rate. And then you even add Georgia tax rates and other things, even though they give some benefits to retirees. But it is interesting, though, that we still have a chunk of that money, and me and this microphone are going to have a fist fight in a minute, but the chunk of that money over 32%, I'd love if we could even push that down a little bit. So we did run another scenario to even optimize a little bit more.
Yeah, we said, what if in these early years, while we could, what if we even considered maxing out the 22% bracket, not just the 12%, but going in the 22% bracket? What does that do? Well, what it does is, while it does increase the tax bill that you would pay in these early years, it buys down that future tax rate that you would have. And this is assuming that tax rates stay flat. Obviously, if tax rates were to increase in the future for any reason, this would be more valuable. And you can see in this scenario, by doing that, and all we did is we increased it up until what we had targeted for your RMD, for your required IRA to have to balloon. You can see that the end value is almost $9.5 million. Now we are almost $3.5 million more than the original plan that you had laid out. And we cut the total cumulative taxes by about $1.3 million. Now, here's the way, at least in our world, that we do financial planning. We sit down with clients and kind of go through it. We operate under the idea that, hey, this is the strategy. This is what we want to implement. But every single year, it becomes a year-by-year decision because of exactly what you said. So what we would do with a client is say, hey, we're proposing that you're going to convert $180,000 to Roth this year. Let's see if we do that and we carry out this plan and we run this through a Monte Carlo simulation, looking at 1,000 different iterations of 1,000 different, do we still have a high probability of success? And the next year, we do the same thing. And the next year, we do the same thing. So that even as you are making some of these structural changes, it's not like you begin down a path that you cannot deviate from. You begin down a path and then you test and retest. And you keep going and you test and retest. You keep going, you test and retest. And you think about if you, over the next 20 years, really were able to convert all of the orange that you see on screen right there to Roth, imagine the millions upon millions of dollars you end up having tax-free later on in life. That way, if you do want to do something like go buy another RV or buy the home or pay for the fill in the blank, you have tax-free dollars that are unencumbered that you can then do that with. It just gives you guys maximum flexibility to do things on your terms, no matter what tax policy is going on at the time.
So why did you drop? What's the reason at 63 that you dropped?
So the reason we did that is we wanted to. It was a little bit of a goal seek to get it below that 32%
So that's where the bracket starts.
You could be even more aggressive, and you could take this all the way out till 75. This is less prescriptive and more. We want you guys to be thinking about, hey, these are strategies. It's just like you said, man. When the Roth came out, I didn't jump on it, and now sitting here, I wish I would have. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that right now in retirement, you guys are enjoying your go-go years. You're doing it. You're loving it. You're doing it. What I don't want you to do is get to age 65 when Medicare starts, and now you have to worry about IRMA premiums, and you think, man, I wish I would have converted when I was in my early 50s. I wish I would have converted in my mid 50s. If you can begin thinking through some of these things now, your future self will likely thank you the same way that yourself today would think that younger man if he would have been funding Roth IRAs back then.
And it's back to that whole mindset of small decisions today, because these wouldn't be heavy lifts currently. Even just getting to the full 12%, maxing out that 12%, is going to get you in a lot better place, and that's not even going to cost you much money.
That's right.
So it's a small decision to really create big legacy results. And I had this conversation yesterday with a client, because we're doing this with actual clients here at the firm, and they said, "Well, what happens?" Like, because we just had an election, what happens if tax rates get extended or even maybe get lower? And I said, well, look, all the things we convert today, it's still these good historic rates. If you tell me that they extend or even expand into lower taxes, what do you think the stock market's going to do? And I was like, it's probably going to go up under the optimism of that more people are going to be able to do this. And I was like, so you're going to have this chunk of money that you just converted that's going to be tax-free. It's going to build an incredible legacy for your kids to pass down. It's kind of a great benefit. And then I played it the other side. What if taxes, because we all know that the federal balance sheet is pretty big. It's heavy with a lot of liabilities. What if they decide they can't extend it? You're going to be very happy that you locked in those tax-free dollars when you could before the clock and the buzzer rung that now you have to pay even more taxes.
And the idea that they can grow tax-free for the rest of your lives plus 10 years of your kids' lives. I mean, that's a huge
It's a great legacy building thing.
I think we probably are letting the healthcare concern. I mean, part of it is we just have to make a decision, because honestly, we're both fairly healthy. We don't have significant issues. But we just, you have to make those decisions about your healthcare choices. It's just kind of a weird system that we have here, because there are other options that we could do, like a medical sharing account, right? So we could do that, which is actually more costly, but it wouldn't really be more costly than if we tried to stay with the marketplace if we had a higher income, right?
Or if you had a higher income and you paid more, you weigh, okay, this is additional cost, but if at the end of the day I end up with $3.5 million more, was it a justifiable cost based on what I have going on?
We all have to be careful. I always pick on people when they let that tax tail wag the entire dog, because as much as I love tax planning, I don't want you trying to save just a little bit here and there and impacting your full decisions. Everybody has their own tails that they're worried about wagging. For you, I could tell immediately when you brought up the subsidy you're getting on the exchange. That's something you're really putting a lot of value to. But I do think I would encourage you to really look at the broad picture and see all the other things that it's also impacting. Because I don't want that to be the decision matrix that's keeping you from these great legacy building opportunities and long-term tax minimization strategies too.
The other side of it is also just the fact that I've got to pull funds out of the market in order to pay the tax bill, right? It's not like I don't have any income really, right? So then just thinking through the mechanics of all of that, you're trying to rebuild your cash reserves, but now I'm going to have a bigger cash hit, and it's okay. It's just a consideration.
It's another one of those reasons why if you did, one of the things that I would think through is if I did have 2 to 3 years of living expenses in cash sitting there, and I had that $200,000, $300,000 in cash, and I was going to have a $20,000 pickup on my income taxes because I did a $100,000 conversion. Well, I know I have the cash there to satisfy that. Another reason why we do like our retarees to be super cash heavy, so that when it comes time to make decisions like this, where they do get to optimize, they're not having to pull a bunch of different levers. They already have cash there that can be used to satisfy that tax bill. So it's one of those things I would think through the strategy that I have in place to raise that cash. Is that the best strategy? Or if I think the markets are at a super high point right now and I've done really well, might I want to accelerate how quickly I build that cash back up?
So if I have a fairly aggressive desire to give, to donate, Roth's not a good answer, right?
Well,
generally.
But you do this in multifaceted approach. And we even thought about this because you have some appreciated holdings on the taxable account. We'll talk about that. But you also, once you reach age 70, you get that opportunity where even some of these tax deferred accounts, because you have a lot of them, QCD, qualified charitable distributions. So there's going to be lots of opportunities to do really good charity tax planning with the way you have your assets structured if you just have the right person helping you pull the levers on that.
But I want to make sure I understand your question about.
I don't want to be donating Roth money.
Sure.
That's what I mean, that's the.
But you've got enough. You've got enough.
I still have
plenty to do both.
Okay.
I mean, that's the big thing. It's just what I see, and this is because you said something that I thought was very powerful that a lot of financial mutants are going to resonate with. They're going to hear you say that, and they're going to say, "Yeah, why are Brian and Bo not addressing that?" It does feel counterproductive to sell perfectly good assets that you've got invested today to pay taxes on something that you're not going to have to pay for. It seems like 15 to 20 years in the future. I'd rather have the money now. And I get that, but you have to always take it. You have to look at this from an opportunity decision of the government right now is offering me the ability to get access to this money tax-free at 12%. If I wait, not only is it the money I have today, but it's the money it grows upon it. And then anything and all the decisions, when it gets pulled out in my 70s, it's going to be in the high 30s. Plus, probably you at that point, you're exceeding now the income threshold for even some of the state benefits that they give you. You could see that you're trading 12% for 40%, but you're also getting all the tax-free growth everything that you did. You're getting. You see how this now becomes. This is a much more complicated decision matrix. But we've run the projections. That's why we always do these predictions, and we use very conservative assumptions there, so you can actually see the net result and even where the break-even analysis is. And that's why I would not ask you if I didn't think it was valuable, because I've seen the other side of it when people show up here and there's late 60s, early 70s, and they show up with tax bombs, and there's just no planning. I was like, man, if you'd have come to me 10 years ago, I could have fixed this for you, because it's really the choice could be, how do we want to optimize this? And I'm sure estate attorneys feel the same way when successful people come to them and go, you realize estate taxes are a choice if you plan. It's kind of the same way as a tax planner. It's a choice on how you want to take your medicine. And if you wait because you're like, I'm living my best life now and I'll just pay the taxes, that's fine. But I think if you're charitably minded, if you're minded that you want to leave something like a legacy to your children, your adult children, it sounds like they're making great decisions on their own, so you want to give them the ability to grow upon that as well. Why not maximize this thing with just a little bit? Because like I said, maximizing the 12%, that seems like, duh. That's a pretty. That one I would fight you on a little bit. If you were my client, I would be like, come on, Robert, 12%? You don't want to give the government 12% on this money and then I'm going to let it grow tax-free for the rest of your life? I mean, that's a pretty good deal.
So you said giving to charity is another goal that you guys have. Walk us through that. How do you guys approach charitable planning? How do you guys think about that on a year-over-year basis? And what are some of your goals that you have around generosity?
We try to live generously. Money is a tool. It is, honestly, we use it for experiences, like to be able to spend time with someone. So ultimately, we are trying to do that with our money mostly. And then the next thing is we certainly want to be. We would love to be able to give generational wealth to our children.
Great.
We live a great life. We don't need much more than what our current life is. I know you've talked about that. It would just drive me crazy to spend a lot of money at a hotel.
For no reason.
It really would. I mean, honestly, I'd be like, well, this shower head's no better than any other shower head, right? So I don't think we're going to really change our lifestyle significantly. We have a great lifestyle, so we've been blessed that way. So then the next thing is the ability to give. That is one of our biggest challenges, is figuring that out here's basically what we want to do. We want to at least give 20% of our wealth away. 10% to our local church, and then 10% to other charities.
That's great.
Now, my default answer
posthumously or while you're living?
Well, that's about what I was going to say, because our default answer was, I said, we're just going to put it in the will. And I'm going to say 10% before our kids get 50-50 split of whatever's left, 10% to the church, and then probably 5 other charities get 2%. This is not because I want accolades or we want accolades. Yeah. We don't want anything.
You
we
just
don't
want
want
anything to make the world a better place. That's wonderful.
So if I decide to do it before then, it's not because I want control or recognition or anything like that. It is just because it might make more sense to do that. And that's one of the challenges that we have not figured out yet, is what is the right approach to be sure that we make it to the end, kind of financially. Like, we still keep looking at each other and going, are we sure?
Yeah.
And also, what's the right stewardship of those assets? We're willing to do that at almost any time, but figuring out what the right mechanism for that is, if that makes sense.
At the end of the day, your money is your money. And so the right choice of what to do and how to do it very much depends on you guys and how you prioritize your goals. So if one of your goals is to be incredibly generous while you're living, then you can absolutely use your money to do that. The way that we would counsel someone to go through that is, okay, in the same vein that we said, hey, this is what it would look like if we did a $100,000 Roth conversion. Let's now run this through the Monte Carlo simulation and see how that works out. We would do the exact same thing if we said, hey, I want to make a $100,000 donation to charity every year for the next 10 years. And I want to give away $1 million over 10 years. Okay, well, let's now run that through the software and see, are we okay? And every decision we make, we answer the question is, are we okay? Once you've satisfied the are we okay, then it comes down to strategy. Okay, well, now how do we give to charity? Does it make sense for us to just write checks? Do we give appreciated securities? If we're going to give on a smaller scale, we're not going to give $100,000 a year, but we're going to give $15,000 a year. Because the standard deduction is so high right now, you guys likely aren't going to itemize most years unless something really, really unique happens. So you'd be prime candidates if you're going to give $15,000 a year, rather than giving $15,000 every year. You donate to a donor advised fund, $30,000 every 2 years. So that way on your taxes, you itemize 1 year, standard 1 year, itemize 1 year, standard 1 year. Or you could decide how to give posthumously. You name the beneficiaries inside your wills. Or there are even estate planning metrics. You guys, right now, it does not seem have an estate planning issue, but based on current estate laws. But if the estate laws were to change in the future, and instead of having $25 million lifetime or estate exemption, it dropped down to $5 million or $10 million. You can see you guys are now, you could potentially have a $10 million estate at some point. And there are even ways that you can give to charity presently to get assets out of your estate, live off the assets. When you pass away, those assets move on. So there are a myriad of ways that you can give, but in our opinion, before you start doing the strategies, you have to answer the are you okays, and that's running through the iterations and actually iterating and then taking the steps to move in that direction.
Yeah, if I'm super excited for you guys, because looking at your numbers, we know enough. I think yours is a both. I think you're going to be able to do some of these goals after your death, if you so choose, with that legacy desire. But then I also think that there's nothing wrong, because this system's actually going to reward you from a tax and a financial perspective to make some of these gifts in a proactive way now too. You could do, we'll talk about annual stacking, to charitable gift funds with some of these appreciated holdings. I also think those qualified charitable distributions once you get into your 70s is going to be a very powerful thing. And there might even be some family gifting down the road to not only help with
we just hit something. Did you see
no,
that?
We've already talked about that.
But
Yeah.
I love the fact, because let me tell you, I mean, and this is not to ring the coffers or the tithe barrels so people are drawing attention to yourself. I think there is something to the fact, though. It's glorious if not only you're leaving this legacy, but also if you do get to experience some of the fruit off of generosity. That doesn't mean you draw attention to yourself, but it just means that part of fulfillment is that you get to experience, because you guys are all about some experience. Why not also let the generosity, because y'all have heard the thing. I mean, when we're all kids, we've already made a bunch of Star Wars jokes and stuff. When I was a kid, I never understood that whole saying of it's better to give than to receive. Because when you're a kid, you're like, what's the next toy? But as you get older and more sentimental, you realize that adage has a lot more power about human nature than we all probably give it credit, is that you guys are in the position where you can be better to give than to receive. And
we've received a lot.
I know it.
But we are blessed people.
But you love experiences,
right?
But I think you're being very humble, and that's good. You should. You have a heart that feels like, I want to make sure this doesn't. This is not a pride thing. This is so you two as a unit, as a couple that loves each other. Y'all can even use this as something y'all reflect upon, be sentimental about. Is look at the fruits that you're creating from a prosperous life and a well-lived life. And I don't know if this is the perfect, I wrote it down. I was sitting here, something was said. I deal all the time where most financial mutants, or even people out there in the world who haven't even discovered our content, I think they all are striving for what we call in the 4 levels of wealth, freedom. And the saying you hear everybody in the world say is, I do what I want, when I want, and how I want. And that's what the typical American, I think, when they're building, saving, and being disciplined, they're trying to get that freedom. I want to give you guys a huge compliment. You've gone beyond level 4 on your wealth. You're actually into level 5, which is abundance, which at the top of the food chain, not many people reach, because it's a completely different mindset. And you're there. I can sense it from just talking to you. Because now, instead of doing what I want, when I want, how I want, it's now knowing who you are, what you value, and what you wake up for, and gives you purpose in the morning. And I can already sense it. You're not moving the goalpost. You're not trying to expand your lifestyle. You guys get it. And that is, I mean, I think that is very rarefied air for people to kind of have resources, but also know what gives them purpose and creates incredible things for their family. Y'all are very good, disciplined individuals who have big hearts, and you've done really good things.
Thanks.
So
our friends still say we're cheap.
I mean, I think you do have some tinges of that. I would probably, I mean, if you were my client, we'd have annual pick on, Robert and Carrie moments where I'd be like, what are you doing? I mean, why? I mean, like, we didn't even pick on you yet. I mean, y'all had in your notes, you donate plasma for money.
We do.
I mean, come on. I mean, what are we doing? You need somebody. I'm the opposite of Susie Orman, because Susie Orman made her entire career telling everybody no. I'd be like, yes, come on, yes, Robert, Carrie, yes, let's do some more.
I was trying to find a 4-hour window on Monday when we're not traveling. I was going to try to find us time, because they're going to give me an extra $25 if I donate plasma. So it is absolutely true. I still have the email as a reminder to go, can we squeeze it in sometime?
You're a mess.
That's hilarious.
But it's just true. It is true.
How will you guys navigate? Thinking about giving and thinking about how you're going to do it, how will you navigate that? What's the conversations you guys will have around what can we do and how do we do it?
I mean, it depends on the need. I mean, when a need comes, like we partner with an organization in Uganda, and when they tell our church they're going to get shut down because the state has come in, then
you can answer that call.
Yeah, that's the time to give.
I love it. But it doesn't sound like you guys struggle with that, right? Like that's something you do right now and you feel comfortable with. That's not a point of tension trying to decide if or can we do that, right?
I don't think so.
No. I made the comment about stewardship mainly because we do want to be responsible stewards of the resources so that it's efficient or effective. So we do think about those kind of things, like appreciable assets. We donate some of those. To be honest, we have a significant amount of carryover donations, cash donations on our taxes that you didn't see. You probably didn't see that.
Probably because your income's been so low, you haven't been able to capitalize on all
30% rule and so forth.
Right. Yeah. So we, when we sold our house, we decided we were going to tithe on basically give a 10% to the church on the proceeds of the house, on the capital proceeds of the house. And so we estimated that the house had grown about $600,000. So, I mean, that helps to have that carryover that's sitting there. So, I mean, we try to do that now, but then we're also thinking from a legacy perspective, and then just thinking about what the right timing of that. There was some reason I thought that maybe it made more sense for me to give that. None of us know when we're going to die, so I can't say, well, a year before I die, I want to do this. But trying to think through if there is a tax advantage to do that while still alive rather than just being in the estate. But I don't know if there is one. Maybe there's really not.
Well, if you are able to deduct charitable contributions against your income, that's certainly advantageous. But you guys are already doing that. What I love hearing is if you do have all these carry forward charitable contributions you've not used, or can do future.
We're still itemized.
Even if we do drive up your income through Roth conversions and stuff, you still have tax mitigators there that can offset that. So where you haven't been able to use as much of those charitable contributions, you have higher income if you go up into the full 12 or full 22% bracket. Now you even get to mitigate that. So it makes the tax cost even lower, which makes it an even more compelling argument to consider.
You really are. I mean, that's what I'm sitting here, because y'all have capital gain carry forwards. Now you're telling me you have charitable gain charitable contribution carry forwards. I'm like, man, you guys are basically begging to optimize some of these things, because y'all have all the tools, all the levers I'm looking for to make my masterpiece of a financial plan. You're telling me you have all these things, but yet you're just leaving them sitting over there on the shelf collecting dust. I mean, we got to get to work on these things.
So we always like to send people away with some things to think about, some stuff that you ought to the conversation we want you to have. First thing that we saw immediately, item number one of homework, is cash reserves, right? For a retired financial independent couple, your cash reserves should probably be in a different spot. I love that you have a strategy to get there. I would even think through, should we have a more accelerated strategy?
Don't get cute. Go ahead and fill up your cash reserves. You have carry forwards. I think let's get that boosted up.
The other thing I would think through is, we looked at your allocation. You guys are in an incredibly aggressive allocation. We didn't actually go through it in depth, but we know that it's about 96% equity. So it is almost an all equity portfolio. It's worked out
to the moon.
It's worked out incredibly well for you. The conversation you guys have is around the why. Can we take on all this risk? Well, yeah, you have enough money, your withdrawal is low enough, but should we? Like, can we or should we? I would walk through your allocation. The next thing that I think you guys have as a homework item is a conversation around, you have made it. You've asked over and over, are we there, are we there, are we there? I think we can say by looking at the numbers that it certainly seems like you are there. We're not your advisor, so we can't say for sure, but your advisor should likely be able to say for sure. Then the question becomes, now what? What is it that we really want to do? Do we want to support our family? Do we want to think about the legacy we leave behind? Do we want to optimize what we're paying in lifetime taxes? You guys have to rethink your goals. At one point in your life, your goal was be financially independent, retire. Now you got to sit down and have another goal conversation. Our goals are, in this order, support ourselves for the rest of our lives, leave a legacy, give to charity, support causes we believe in, not pay a ton of tax. Whatever that thing is, you guys ought to reprioritize and go through those. And then once you've ordered your goals, then you start thinking about the strategy. Okay, what's the appropriate strategy? If leaving a legacy to our kids is something that's incredibly valuable, perhaps Roth conversions make a lot of sense in order to be able to do that. If giving money to organizations today that we love makes sense, perhaps we should work into our budget. We don't live off $100,000 a year. We live off of $150,000 a year. And we know that $50,000 of that goes to an organization every year that we support. And then you run that through the Monte Carlo and you test it to see, is this viable? You guys are at the place right now where you're in the driver's seat. You just have to decide what you want the rest of your life, what you want the next 30, 40, 50 years to look like. And I would argue you've spent these last few years being go-go, which is awesome. Now it makes sense to apply some intentionality around just living and experiencing, and actually, okay, this is what we're working towards. Does that make sense? Oh, I think you guys are awesome.
Y'all are still well in the go-go years. I mean, our age difference isn't that far. So I'm telling you, you have lots of go-go years left. So that's why this is so cool, because you're not even like, you're still young retirees. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's just, that's back to, you have tremendous layers of time. Another one of those levers that as a planner I would be trying to pull. This has been a blast. And I'm hoping anybody who watches this can see that, yeah, those small decisions can create huge results, even with mistakes. I mean, that's why when I was doing Millionaire Mission, I laid out all my mistakes too, is because I think there's a lot of benefit in paying it forward, doing the experience shares. But I have loved, I mean, I've gotten at least 2 or 3 harem arms moments, where just to kind of celebrate all the good decisions you've made. And I can't thank you enough for coming on our show today.
We've enjoyed it. Thank you.
You guys have been awesome. If you would like to be a guest on Making a Millionaire, you can go to moneyguide.com/apply. Or if you want access to all the resources we make available, you can go to moneyguide.com/resources so that you can do money better.
Guys, thanks for joining us. This has been a blast to meet some financial mutants, hearing about their great, big, beautiful tomorrow. I'm your host, Brian Preston, joined by Mr. Bo Hansen. Money Guy team,